Welcome back to our Faith Tabernacle panel discussion. We have been focusing on building shatterproof families. And our topic for today is part of the shared family values segment. And we are focusing today on trust and trustworthiness. Trust and trustworthiness, which is a very important topic for us to discuss, since it's one of the foundational tools or foundational building blocks, I think, in families. So just as a reminder, for those of you who are participating, we welcome you, and we would like you to truly participate in this discussion. We have different ways in which you can participate. We have emojis that are at the bottom of your screen where you can share your reactions. You can raise your hand if you have something to say, or you can go to the chat room and put your questions or comments, even if it is amen or yes, I agree, or what have you. Put those in the chat room so that we can see that you're with us and you're participating. And we look forward to you being a part of this discussion here this evening. Today, as our panelists, we have with us Pastor Anthony Henry, our host pastor. He's on the panel this evening, as well as Reverend Dr. Roger Samuel. Wave your hand, Dr. Samuel. He goes by Dr. Facilitator, in case you're reading the squares. And then we have Miss Sharita Odell, who is, she participates, but she usually participates incognito. Now we get to see her face as well as hear her voice. So we are so happy, Sharita, that you've joined us here today to be on this panel.
Absolute pleasure.
So to start off, we are going to define the word trust. And as you hear the definition, please feel free again to go in the chat room and put something in there. But I want you to think about this definition so that as we continue our discussion, you would have something to use as a foundational tool to which you can begin your comments. So I'm going to give you the secular definition of trust. Trust is assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. And I say something because, believe it or not, we place our trust in a lot of things. For example, when I sat on my chair, I trusted that it would hold me up, that I would not fall, that I would, it would support me. That's trust, right? That's trusting in something that I have ultimate assurance it would do what it intends to do, and that is to hold me up and support me as I sit here. So now I am going to ask Dr. Samuel to give us the biblical definition of trust.
Thank you, Dr. Neff. The word translated trust in the Bible literally means a bold confidence, sure security, or actions based on that security. Trust is not exactly the same as faith, which is the gift of God, Ephesians 2:8 and 9. Rather, trusting is what we do because of the faith we have been given. Trusting is believing in the promise of God in all circumstances, even in those where evidence seems to be contrary. Hebrews 11 talks about faith, which is accepting and believing the truth that God revealed about himself, supremely in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ. Nevertheless, the practical consequence of faith in God is trust, which we provide by living out our full acceptance of God's promise day by day. Furthermore, it is by this trust we have promised peace. You will keep in perfect peace whose minds are stayed upon you because he trusts in you. Isaiah 26:3. And the classic verse regarding trust is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This verse sums up the Bible teaching on trust. First, it is the Lord in whom we are to trust, not ourselves, not our plans, and certainly not the world's wisdom or devices. We trust in the Lord because He and He only is truly trustworthy, and His word is trustworthy.
Amen. That was wonderful, Pastor Samuel. You know, this past Sunday, when I was listening to my pastor preach here
Yeah,
in Arizona, he did touch on trust, and he talked about trust as leaning on God,
yeah,
leaning on Him, leaning not on my own understanding, but leaning on Him,
yeah,
because He is the only one who I can have that bold confidence that you spoke about, and who I know will give me that peace, you know, that everything will be all right.
yeah,
And that's what we do as believers. We trust in God to take us through all the things that we will be going through.
yeah,
And we have learned, because we all have had some experiences in life, we've learned that when we trust on others, that's there's no assurance that they will come true for us. That is not always um, it's not always that bold confidence is not always there when we trust on others, because we are human
yeah.
and we are subject to human frailties. So let's talk a little bit about expectations. I spoke about when I sit on my chair, I expect that it would hold me up, that it would support me while I am sitting on this chair. So, Pastor Henry, what can you share with us about managing expectations with regards to trust?
In relationships, Dr. Neff, and those who are listening this evening, good evening. In relationships, we do have our own personal expectations when we enter a relationship. And oftentimes, our relationship, uh, our expectation of the other person in that relationship is not always the same that the person would have as relating to trust. And so one of the things that we need to understand about shared values is that in trusting, you have to make sure, you have to communicate with your partner in such a way that your expectations are made known and are cleared to that individual. For example, a person who probably was reared in a home with 5 brothers and 5 sisters may see no problem in going through the cell phone of the partner and looking at the text messages and what have you. A person who was probably reared as a one child, who knows privacy and is accustomed to privacy, may feel that that is, not an act of mistrusting, and the only reason why you are looking in my phone is because you didn't trust me. Whereas the other person who is, who had all of these brothers and sisters around him, it's just a habit of looking in the phone. It's not that they don't trust, but it's just a matter of knowing one another's, and so that one needs to, when one is thinking about trust in relationships, oftentimes you hear somebody saying, well, you don't trust me. Well, that level of trust depends a lot on where we came from, our background, and the expectations that we are bringing into the relationship.
Okay, so are you saying that in relationships we tend to establish those boundaries, whether we actually establish them intentionally, or if just through our own upbringing and so forth, it is expected that there are certain boundaries that would not be crossed so that we don't invade each other's privacy?
Yes, basically, so that it is important that you make those things are made clear when during the formative years of the periods of the relationship, probably months or days or weeks, but those things are made clear so that there isn't major misunderstanding on what is expected and what would be considered as being trustworthy.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up now for audience participation because Pastor Henry mentioned something that I think might spark some conversation. He said that sometimes in relationships, one person may pick up the cell phone of another and begin to go through it. And it may, depending on your upbringing, one may think that, hey, you don't trust me. Is that why you're looking through my cell phone? Whereas others may not see that as an invasion of privacy. So I want to hear from my audience members here tonight. What do you think about that? How would you feel if your partner, someone who live in the same household as you, picks up your cell phone and begins to go through it? You can use the chat room or raise your hand or just begin speaking.
Hi, good night.
Hi.
I would think that the person does not hold a lot of trust in me. You know, there's a trust issue there.
So you think that the person doesn't trust you. That's why they're rifling through your cell phone. Okay. Someone else? I think Abigail, were you about to say something?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Ann?
Good night. Somebody, okay. Somebody's going.
And
I think Ann, go ahead, Ann. I'll come back to you,
Okay,
Keisha.
we talked earlier about a sense of security. And I think that when there is lack of that sense of security, mistrust develops. Because if I feel secure, if I'm confident that you love me, I wouldn't have a reason to go into your cell phone. And if you leave your cell phone open to me, you know, if you hide your cell phone all the time, I would want to have a reason to figure out why you hiding your cell phone. Or if I picked up your cell phone and you grab it from me, I want to know why. Okay, but if I have that sense of security, then I don't have any reason to mistrust you.
That's an
But
excellent
that sense
point.
of security develops over time.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good point. Keisha, you have something to follow that?
I was just going to add, it for me, that will become a problem if it works one way, right? If I cannot access your phone, well, then I do not think it's right for me. So I don't need to check your phone if your phone is unsecured. But if it's something that I realize that, you know, you always have to be looking over your shoulder, you know, it's like a top secret, the way you keep it or treat it, I will have reasons to think. But if my phone is unlocked and your phone is locked, if you have access to my phone and I cannot have access to your phone, then I will, that is when issue is. But then I will have no need if both phones are unlocked and at any time I have access to your phone, you have access to mine, then I have no reason to think that, you know, otherwise.
So you're saying between you and as well as Anne, you're saying that a person's actions may cause you to distrust or mistrust because of their actions. Okay, their response to you touching the phone or even getting close to it would be a signal to, hey, there's something amiss, right? And because of that, you do things that would then you then go into spy mode. Is that it? You go into spy mode?
I don't know if I might want, I don't know if I'll spy, but it will definitely create some tension. I don't know if I'll go to the extent where I need to go and look, because sometimes we are not prepared for what is you know, in front of us. We are not prepared to, you know, deal with what is there. So I will prefer not to look, but then I will have an issue with, why is it, if we are one, we are married, we're in a relationship, why is it your property now becomes, you know, such a secret order?
So let me ask a question, and anyone could respond to this. How would you handle that situation then? If you, according to Keisha, she's not going to go into spy mode, but there would be a question in her mind as to why it is that your phone is off limits to her. So how would you address it? I mean, is this something that you just fester in your mind, or is this something that you would have a conversation about?
Good night. Actually, we had Trevor, and I was just wondering, why would you need to go into someone's phone? What is your reason? Because the reason and your intent would be the cause for concern more than anything else. Is it that you don't trust me, or is it that there is a fault in yourself that it's hard for you to trust someone? And that is where the conversation may need to start before even anything else happens about whether you trust me, or is it that you have trust issues yourself. So that's what we were thinking. Sorry, before you ask the question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That now you've raised some more questions with your response. I like it. Those are definitely questions we need to ponder and address. But I want to move on to Brother Reynolds and Sister Cecilia. Your phone. You raised your hand. What comments do you have?
Okay, good night all. Brother Reynolds here. Based on what Pastor had mentioned before, with the person who came up in a single child coming up in a home in comparison to a larger family.
Mm-hmm.
I am wondering if some ground rules in getting married, some ground rules should have been put in place initially, that we're starting on a level playing field, and this is what's going to happen, where there are no boundaries where our phones are concerned. But then I'm looking at one of the scenarios that was brought up earlier, where, and even what Sister Bevan had just spoken about, concerning why would you want to look at someone's cell phone?
Right.
So I'm presenting a scenario here. Let's say I forgot my cell phone in the car. It's in the garage. The garage is a distance away from home, and I need to make an emergency call. And I use your phone while you were in the bathroom to make that call. As innocent as it is, I made a call.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, if you come out and you see it as I am looking in your phone, and you see it as I am, invading your privacy, then there's another question to be asked there. Because if that's what you're concerned about, then the question is there something that you're hiding that, you are pointing fingers at me as, searching through your phone, so either way you look at it, there's a sort of mistrust kind of scenario there, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to reach out to the panel members. Any of you can jump in and address that.
Sharita here. I was listening intently because I would say during the phase where you are getting to know your partner, if you're in a fiance stage or trending towards marriage and you're getting to know that partner, a lot of trust is built on how you react to different situations and talking and so forth. For example, because, and so many valid points came up, because I have nothing to hide, my phone is there. My husband knows the password to get into it. I have sometimes told him, look in it and find such and such a number for me, and vice versa. And I've always come out and said, the minute I have to wait till you go in a room, take your phone and see what's going on, we have a problem. This is an indicator that we have a problem. And I think that's where you need to sit down and discuss boundaries. A lot of people do these things because of the influence of a previous relationship. There may have been, infidelity or something that has them in trigger mode.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's just innate. How do you deal with that? That's where now you have to come and allow your partner to prove himself over and over again. And that is how trust is built.
Okay. I'm going to go to Sister Maxine and then Pastor Griffin. I'll come to you next. Sister Maxine?
Hello. If two people are secure within themselves in their relationship, there is no reason to have to check one another's phones. Or if you're so secure in your relationship and you both have your phones out there, and one is just looking on the phone for no apparent reason, looking on one another's phone, and it's agreed upon, then that's okay. But if a person is checking another person's phone, sometimes they're checking to make sure that that other person is not guilty of the very thing that they're doing.
Mm, good point, Maxine. Good point.
So it's called you're deflecting, right?
Yes.
All right, let me read what Pastor Griffith has in the chat. Are we assuming that there are no unfaithful partners, and that is it criminal, unmoral for one to investigate? Ooh, Pastor Griffith. Pastor Samuel, you want to address that one?
Lord have mercy. I mean, it's possible, but I think based on something that was shared earlier, that's why early in relationships and in friendship, there has to be discussion, because Pastor Henry talked about this as a shared value. And so we come in with different expectations and different upbringing that informs how we react and respond. So I think if early in a relationship, there's some discussions, I mean, maybe we can start to work through those things. And like what, but if there's a point where you feel there's some uncertainty or there's reason to question, I wouldn't suggest you just start looking around at people's phone. I think you would confront them and say, I feel this way. And then, at some point, see where the conversation goes and give the person the benefit of the doubt, because I don't think we should walk around creating an environment where we feel a certain way and we feel we can't be open. But if we feel we have reason for concern, we should confront and have a conversation. And perhaps after that, you may be guided accordingly.
Okay.
Dr. Neff, can I chime in a little?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would think that for individuals who are getting into a relationship, you should start on the basis that everything is in the open for both of us. So that you should know what my bank account is, even though it's $5. You should know what it is, what my insurance policies are. You should know everything. Every piece of data on my phone, if you want to know what it is, I should let you have it and let you know what it is, and vice versa. To me, that is how you start to build trust. But once you start off, and I use the phone as an example, because it's something that is very much practical today. But once we start off on the basis that, listen, I don't want you to see, my phone is belonging to my bag and I don't want you to touch my phone, or that kind of a thing, in a sense, it creates mistrust. And so I think it goes back to what Pastor Griffith was said in his message, in the chat, that the assumption that you build of the person, anytime you start with those assumptions that somebody is criminal or somebody is cheating or something, it signifies that there is a level of mistrust. So that if you as the individual cannot say to yourself and to the person, I am an open book, ask me anything that you want and I'm willing to tell you the good and the bad, it's up to you to decide what you want to, then trust will never be built and trust will never be experienced.
Great. That's a great segue to our next segment. And Pastor Samuel, you're going to talk about how to build trust. How do we build trust?
Yes, because that's a very exciting thing. Because and in addition to what Pastor Henry was just saying, if we're honest with ourselves, it becomes easier for us to be honest with other people. And so we build trust, or we can build trust by being truthful in what we do and what we say. So that's a very important point. Building trust, we have to be truthful in what we do and what we say. So it creates an environment of openness and conversation. Secondly, We admit when we don't know something. There's no need to pretend that I'm aware, and when the conversation is going, I'm giving you the impression that I know what you're talking about, and I have no clue. So it's important to admit when you don't know something. Thirdly, admit when you're wrong. You know, it shows, because once you can admit when you're wrong, it's easy for someone to trust and have confidence in you, because you are not hiding and you are sincere. I'm wrong and I apologize, I'm sorry. And fourthly, if you say you're going to do it, do it. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Keep your word, practice keeping your word as much as possible. That it encourages building trust. Yes, and also, if you meant to do it as well. Another aspect of building trust is explaining your thought process. And so it's important to let people know, this is how I'm thinking, this is what's going on in my mind. So explain your thought process is a healthy way of also building trust. And extend trust to others. Let them know that you are willing to give them the opportunity. Yes? So extend trust to others and include others. And especially in relationship, we must give the benefit of the doubt. Give people the benefit of the doubt and be vulnerable gradually. So gradually be vulnerable as you build trust. Vulnerable, no, Pastor, you love that one, but be vulnerable gradually. Yes. Explain your feelings, and the last one, be willing to give as well as be willing to receive. So those are some things I think we could think about in building trust, and being truthful always, and being explaining, you know, doing and saying, you know. So that's just a few pointers I like to share.
So what I'm getting from what you're saying is that there's a lot of reciprocity in this trust building.
Yes.
And in the chat, Elizabeth says, should there be privacy issues that you need limits on, or no limits in the marriage?
Well, before she go to, may I give you a few building blocks as well?
Yes, please do.
Yes, so a few building blocks that we can include that may help as well is identifying other trust levels. So identify in others, you know, levels of where they can be trusted, and maybe we can discuss it as we go along. And reliability, how reliable are they? The integrity, how integral they are, and patience and communication, and how accepting they are of responsibilities, and building accountability partner relationships. So those type of things can also be supportive building blocks in for building trust. So.
Okay. All right. We heard the different blocks that we can use to build trust in relationships, that reciprocity is key. But one of the blocks you mentioned was communication. It brings us back to, and we did a session on communication. It brings us back to the importance of communication in relationships in marriage. So thank you, Pastor Samuel, for those blocks. All right, let's go to the chat and see what we have here. Anyone wants to touch on the privacy issues in marriage?
Sharita?
Well, it goes back, and I keep going back.
Is there such a thing as privacy in marriage?
Oh my goodness. It goes back to this discussion. You cannot ever undervalue communication. When you are at the start of a marriage, in a marriage, never stop communicating. Because it's at that point that you know what boundaries are, what not to cross. There's certain, and let's start at the basics, and please do not laugh out. But going down to the basics of privacy in a marriage, this is the bathroom. This is my space. You don't come in the space when I'm in there asking for your toothpaste. No. You stay out of that space because this is now my space. As basic as that is, when you have practiced that over and over, okay, good. That in itself is a building block of trust. You have to learn to build trust in the big and the small. We often think of trust only as these big wow factors to help maintain a relationship, but it comes down to even the little thing. For example, let's look at something that somebody might see petty, but I know that if I don't keep it up, I could damage my relationship. My husband trusts that when he gets home, and I've been there all day, that he will not see dishes in the sink, for which Sharita is notorious for doing. So guess what? If it is that one little thing, I make sure I do my part, put it away. Boom, you've built one of the building blocks of trust that we were talking about earlier. So we have to first of all stop thinking of building blocks to trust, this big wow word, as just these things that have to do with stepping out or not stepping out in relationships. It starts with the little foxes. Sometimes it's the very little foxes that damage relationships. And lastly, real quick on that point, even things like, you know what? We agree that what happens in our home stays in our home. So don't let me hear you were out with the boys talking about, you know, when Sharita is in the shower, she likes to blow her nose. Certain things that are in our relationship stay with within our relationship, and we keep that kind of vow that our union is private. So let's stick to that. So those are things that you have to look at in terms of privacy. There are many aspects to it.
Dr. Neff?
Yes.
Probably it's because I grew up in a large with a, 4 brothers, 2 sisters. But the only thing that I think that I would keep private in my relationship is my toothbrush. Toothbrush.
No sharing of the toothbrush. Okay.
No.
Got it. Doesn't make sense, but got it. Okay. I just want to go to Pastor Griffin made a comment in the chat regarding privacy as well. He says, concerning privacy in marriage, a person should have the right to privacy, going to the bathroom, as Sherry just said, or dressing. What other areas am I missing? He says, are there other areas where privacy is important? I'll come back to you, Divine, in a minute. Maxine, did you have something to address with privacy?
I have somewhat of a question. I've never been married, so I can't do a lot of elaborating on marriage. However, I do have a question. I was engaged once, but not married. Didn't get married. When you talk about privacy in a marriage, is there such thing as when it comes to the point where the individual wants to know your every move, where you're going, who you're going with? Could it get to a point that you're suffocating the marriage?
Okay, Pastor Henry, jump on in.
No, actually, that may be a sign of insecurity in the person to whom you're married. If you have to ask those questions, where you going, who are you going with, where were you 6 o'clock or where were you 9 o'clock? Probably there is a measure of there is a measure of insecurity on the person. And there is a particular scripture that I like to apply to situations like those. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So that he's probably the type that you cannot trust, because give him a chance or give her a chance, they're going to go in places where they ought not to be.
Mm-hmm. All right, now I'm going to go to the chat. Design says, I truly believe that there needs to be open dialogue at the beginning, not the first date of the relationship. If this is someone who you want to share your heart with, you should be honest with yourself and with them about trust issues from the past. Most importantly, prior to the relationship, you must go before God to help heal you from the trust issues, so you do not go into the next relationship with these issues at the forefront. Very well said. Very well
Quite
said.
agree. Quite agree.
Very well said. All right. Pastor Griffith, that is a problem, but I think it is decent for me to tell my wife where I'm going. I don't think the question was whether or not you should tell your wife or your husband where you're going. I think it was more an issue of this person wanting you to account for every minute of your day, or always questioning where you're going, who you're talking to, where you're with, who you're with, and so forth. I think that was more the issue. Not an issue of saying, hey, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to go visit my friend, and so forth. All right, I'm going to move on to stigmatization. Dr. Facilitator, you had a comment?
No, I was just thinking while you were talking that since they're building blocks into trust, the privacy issues I think can be dealt with over a period of time, because you may not trust entirely immediately, but gradually that trust is gained more and more, and you feel more obliged or willing to share things that you would have kept private. So I think as you build that stronger reliance, it gives you reason to want to share. So I think that's the whole idea of trust, building trust, so that eventually you will share more, and because you feel more comfortable to share more. And as you share more, then whatever may have been a privacy issue will be addressed, because you feel more confident. This may have happened to me at some point in time, or this is what I feel, and this is what I'm going through. So I think as you build that trust, I feel we gain greater reliance and confidence in each other. So I think sometimes, I hope we don't get the idea that means by building trust, everything is achieved right away.
It takes time. It's a process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Stigmatization. Pastor Henry?
Okay. I think one of the problems with trust is that depends on where we are from or where we live. Going with that is a certain number of trust. I work with an institution, and I knew definitely that while you were in Trinidad, if you put on that application that you came from you lived in a particular area, the chances of getting that job was very rare. And some of you from Trinidad would know exactly what I'm talking about. And that wasn't hidden, because somehow the whole group, the whole community was stigmatized as being untrustworthy, not being trustworthy. But this is not something new. I mean, when Paul was writing to one of his epistles, I can't remember exactly. Let me see if I could find. But he spoke. I think it was Titus, where he says that 1:12. He says one of Crete's own prophets has said it. Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons. So here a whole community is stigmatized as liars. And if you have to deal, how do we as Christians deal with people who may have this sort of a stigmatization among them? Because many a times, we as Christians, we meet people like that, and because they're from certain areas, we, instead of opening our arms to receive them, we show no trust in them, and we give them no chance. And we don't judge them on merit. We just simply lock them off from our lives, from our churches and everything else.
Okay, stigmatization. Let's open it up. Have you ever experienced stigmatization because you either belong to a certain group? It may be because you are a female. It may be because you're a male. Have you ever experienced being stigmatized because of who you are, or what group you belong to, or what organization you belong to, and therefore was either ostracized or was not afforded the same amount of trust as others who were in a more privileged group?
I can perhaps start back that by saying I have not experienced it being on that side of it, but culturally growing up here in Barbados, um, it is tragic to say that from very young we were programmed that a certain demographic from the Caribbean was not to be trusted, that they were tricky, that they were resourceful. And imagine these are comments that I am hearing about another country in our beloved Caribbean from probably the time I was 4 or 5 years old, not even at the stage where I could make my own, formulate my own opinions. I hadn't even met this demographic, but yet I was being programmed, God, be careful of them. And then to imagine, you know, as I got older, I met people from this particular country that was always bashed. Um, I am not afraid to say that Barbados, unfortunately, is a very xenophobic country. Pray for us. Um, but as I met these people, I realized some persons I came into contact with were the most beautiful people I had ever encountered. And even though our country was quick to label another, you had to allow yourself to break those strongholds in your mind and let each person own their own merit as far as how you related to them. And I think that's one of the things that we have to remember when we are programmed by our culture, by our race, by our gender to see others a certain way. We have to allow them to earn their you know, their pound of flesh in our life, mentally, spiritually, and everything else.
I am glad you mentioned this, Sharita, because one of the things that we are seeing right now in the United States of America with this Black Lives Matter protest is all as a result of the way people were programmed over the years, and sadly, the Black people have been on the bad side of it or the receiving side of it, and so they are mistrusted. You know, I was pulled over sometime in Florida, driving on a side street, and you know what the reason was given to me? I was driving too slow. I was driving under 40 miles. The sign said 40 miles per hour. I was driving below 40 miles per hour and keeping back traffic. And when I look in my rearview mirror, there weren't any cars anywhere on the street. And the only problem that I was pulled over for is because I was Black.
Yes, yes, powerful indeed. Even when I was studying in Houston, I was pulled over as we were college kids heading to a party. 5 Caribbean people packed in a car. The only thing that saved us, and guess what? They said, you fit the description. The only thing that saved us was that we had a flyer of the dentist, because we were in a high society neighborhood. We had a flyer to the dentist house and we were lost. The flyer saying dentist so and so, that was the only thing that saved us. And he prejudged us just because he assumed, number one, you're not where you're supposed to be. Number two, look at your color. You really shouldn't be up in here. Right. And it shows that that has permeated our society for years. Yes. And now we have to break those chains.
Yes. And the thing is that, you know, it's done to us and we are angry about it, but very often we do it to others, and we do it to non-Christians. We do it to people. I mean, ask the average Christian, how are they going to respond if two gay men walk into the church holding hands? You know, what is going to be the risk? You just don't trust them because you are told that they're up to no good. You just do not, it's a matter of trust. You just do not trust them to be of any good. When and we would get up there and preach on the service that all sinners need to come to Jesus Christ. So you know?
It's true.
So this whole thing about trust, I mean, it's built into our psyche in a way that we sometimes don't even understand it. And if we are going to bring it into our relationships and to appreciate the value of it in our relationships, we have to understand that all our psychological hang-ups from the past and from our environment, we need to rid ourselves of them in dealing with that one person that we are dealing with in front of us.
And to add to that, I would say this, because what was coming to my spirit was, that's why it's so critical to we talk about trust God, and it sounds very cliche. But if you think about it, that in effect is the absolute perfect reset button. Because when we trust God, we let go, and we read that word, we let go of all our hang-ups, all our preconceived notions, all our prejudices, all our discriminatory types of thinking, and we then try to do things according to the word. And if we do that from a Christian perspective, we have to take that model now and apply it over here, not only in relationships at work, but with our own marriage, with our relationship with friends and family. Apply that same reset principle where we let go, shed our old way of thinking, and allow this person to build and build, and us jointly build blocks in our mind. So it helps you visualize, true trust. Trust God, that's our reset button spiritually. Let's apply it now to man.
Pastor Henry mentioned the Black Lives Matter, and it is, let me pose it as a question. Do you find it easier to accept lack of trust and lack of stigmatization from those who are different than us than we do for those who are like us? Who is it easier to accept that from?
That's deep.
I don't know. The truth is, I don't know that one. I have never probably been tested along that path. I probably may have been. But I think that I am probably more probably more angry with somebody of my color to behave as though, to discriminate against their own color than if somebody from another color had done it. Probably I would think I would feel that way. Probably I'd feel that way.
Absolutely. But let me bring it closer to home. What about within the family? One of your own, as opposed to a neighbor down the street or a stranger in the grocery store, or, when you have someone who's known you all your life or who is very close to your family, or to be the person to stigmatize you or to treat you other than. To me, that's a lot more difficult to accept, because you're talking about, someone who knows you, who you care about, who you love, who you.
When I was a teenager, I was very close to my pastors. I was in the house often. I did several things for them. We had a very good relationship. And one of the young ladies went to them and would have shared some information. I mean, things that they said that I said, and I did not say. And I guess she was very convincing in what she said. And it looked like they believed what she said without even asking me. And I thought they knew me enough to know I would not have said those things, etc., etc. And at that moment, I really felt like, how could you believe, and she was close to them as well as we were all close. But somehow, so that I felt wounded because I thought these are people who I thought knew me and understood
right
the kind of person I was, and they were dear to my heart because they are my leaders, they are my spiritual mentors. And that really devastated me. And so my way out of that, I had to pray for that girl who said all the bad things, because at that moment I felt maybe I should just leave, I should just walk away, I should just give up, because why should I stay loyal to people who don't trust or believe? And so, but in that moment, I decided to pray for the person who I felt a certain way about, and I got through it. And somehow I was able to maintain my loyalty and find a way to embrace this sister after a while, because I had to pray a while to get some other thing out of my system.
Right.
And the more I prayed for her, the more I was able to feel compassion for her, and my heart changed it towards her. But the fact of knowing that the people I trusted didn't trust, well, I thought trusted me, at that moment, something she said caused them to question my trust.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that, Pastor Samuel. We're
Could
going to
I,
move on to,
could I
oh, okay,
say
Pastor. Okay,
something?
go ahead, Anne. Go ahead.
Okay, I think stigmatism is very bad, but I think when you're being stigmatized, it could be an opportunity for you to rise above people's expectations. It could present you an opportunity to prove them wrong. Because I remember when going to school, my brother was a troublemaker. And so when I attended elementary school, the expectation was that because my brother was a troublemaker, I would be a troublemaker also.
Right.
But that gave me the opportunity to prove that individual wrong and to prove to her that she couldn't judge me because of the behavior of my brother. Because you come from the same family doesn't make you exactly the same as your brother or your sister. So it could be an opportunity to rise above the expectations, what people expect from you. Because I remember also in the Bible when Jesus was calling his disciples, and I think it was Philip found Nathaniel, and when he told him that that he had found the Messiah, his response was, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Right? But because they followed Jesus over a particular number of years and saw his character, then he was able to prove to them that yes, something good can come out of Nazareth. So it gives you an opportunity to prove to the naysayers that you're not what they expect you to be.
That is an excellent point, Anne. Thank you. And then Pastor Griffith had his hand raised. Pastor Griffith, go ahead.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yes.
Yes.
I good. Now I may not exactly speak to the matter of the stigmatization, but I want to suggest that I've always been saying that trust is extremely important and one of my 5 foundations to relationships that must exist. But in the same way, we must also say that trustworthiness, and the point about it is that on who is responsible for establishing trustworthiness and whose interest is it most important. I think it always is me to prove my of the stigmatization in spite of whatever else, and people will always bring their past experience, whether it be their growing up or the dishonest relationship they've had, that will always be there. I think that invariably all of us as individuals must think it extremely important upon ourselves is like our character. And when people look at me, I should be able to emanate the kind of a person that is in fact trustworthy. For if I were looking for people to entrust to something, I would say, wait, is so and so trustworthy to me? Yes, I think she is. She has proven to me that she is. So I'm saying that being trustworthy, we must start with ourselves. And unfortunately, I think that we have got to go about living our life in such a way that people can say, yes, like we can say that this is a man of integrity. In other words, yes, this is a person who I know is trustworthy. And perhaps we need to stop looking at the other person and start within ourselves. I pause.
Excellent point, Pastor Griffith. Because oftentimes it starts with us. Sometimes the seed of mistrust is planted within ourselves, and therefore we project it on others, or we deflect, or what have you. But I think once we establish that we are trustworthy and worthy of someone's trust, that we find that we will continue, we will build that trust. So this is a good point to move on to how to maintain trust. Sharita, how do we maintain trust in relationships?
Well, I think one of the first things that we have to come to grips with is that we are an imperfect people. So let's settle that. And in the context of a relationship, even the strongest relationships will be tested. The strongest relationships will have issues. Um, One of the first things I learned when it came to marriage counseling for us was the word repair. Repair. Simple little word, but it helped to acknowledge the fact that there will be breakages, falls along the way, what disagreements, many, many, many. But what do we do? If you feel that there's a big breach of trust, repair, repair. Your single goal is to repair that relationship. One of the things I want you to visualize when you think trust is the word intimacy. And people often quickly equate it with the sexual aspect of it, but think intimacy in the sense of in to me see. Good. So we got that settled. Now let's imagine a 100-meter hurdle race, okay? That's a straight race down the track, but with 10 sets of hurdles in your way. That's what we call life. Part of maintaining trust is learning how to navigate each of those hurdles skillfully and get into the finish line. And tips to help you along the way to navigate those hurdles include simple things like, if you are in a noise and you know it is your fault, you know it, come on now, take responsibility. Don't see it as weakness, as you broke under pressure, so you've lost the war. We all going back to the word repair. Take responsibility and acknowledge your shortcomings and discuss where things went wrong, your expectations and what you could have done better, etc. Also, I believe, number 2, practice, and this is hard, I know, I understand, but practice radical transparency. What does that mean? Simple thing. And it might include, one of the things I love about my husband, because it's a rarity and I make sure I tell him thank you every time. Out of the blue, he might just call to say, yeah, man, just checking in. Hi, well, I'm fine. I'm good. Glad to hear you. Yeah, everything going good with you? Yeah. And as simple as that 10-second phone call is, I have come away feeling like, wow, intimacy. He isn't checking up on me to see if you're done by Larry, Joe, or Mo, but just touching base to connect. So let's practice radical transparency where we're just open books unapologetically, and that helps to maintain trust because you don't feel somebody's hiding or tricking you or whatever. Another one I would say is set aside time, purposely set aside time to get to know the individual that you might be married to for 20 years, 40 years, or 60 years already. You still don't know them. Set aside time. Some people call it date night. You might just call it a little 10-minute lime on the patio after dinner, but constantly talk to that person, because every time you converse, there's some extra nugget that you're taking away about them that you didn't know before. And in all this character building, it helps you to know what buttons to push, what not to push. I can just give you probably about 2 more. This is a hard one, and it going back similar to that one about taking responsibility. Ready for this one? And this is tough, especially for those strong-willed females like myself. You ready for it? Learn to compromise. Learn to compromise. It's a tough one, but it shows vulnerability. It shows that you are willing to sacrifice a part of you sometimes to let the other person come forward. Learn to compromise. And they feel good knowing that, wow, I know that you don't like watching movies, but since my love language is quality time, I really appreciate the fact that you've taken an hour to sit down with me and watch it anyways. Learn to compromise. And I'm going to end on this one. Some people might disagree with this, but I think it is powerful in building trust, because a healthy marriage is one in which each of you also has your own relationships, your own friendships, and your own life. Yes, you heard me say it. Spend time with friends outside of your relationship. Your husband, your partner is not your in all, end all, be all. You love them, but I still believe you have to give space, for example, for the boys to be boys. You know, you have to allow them to go in that man cave virtually with their guys and release and relax and sit down and talk whatever men talk. And I find that when you give them the space to do that, they come back loving on you more because you have released them, trusting them to have healthy relationships with you know, other men. So I think overall, the marriage of all those things I just mentioned help you to maintain trust. It keeps it keeps things open, transparent, alive, and vulnerable, all aiming towards that one word, intimacy.
Wow, that was good, Sharita. I need some comments. You dropped some really heavy nuggets there. So I want to hear comments from the audience. What do you think about this? Maintaining trust, intimacy, depositing into your trust bank, you know, so that you can get the residuals of that. What do you think about that? Let's see. Divine says nobody likes a clingy mate.
No, we don't ever want to be a level 5 Klingon in a relationship. Biggest turnoff ever.
And then Elizabeth said, learn also not to put unreachable expectations on each other. Okay, so I need to hear from the rest of you. How do you maintain trust? And what do you think about these suggested tips that Sharita shared? Let me see. Let me go back to my gallery view so I can see who's all out there. And you have something to share?
I think one of the ways that you maintain trust is by giving explanations for your action, because you know you might do something, and if I ask you why and you cannot give me a reason why you acted the way you acted, then I say, well, you know, then I have questions in my mind. And it could be just a simple explanation. I did that because. So I think giving explanations helps to build trust.
So I did that because I felt like it. Is that a good one? Is that a good
Not
response?
necessarily so. No, but giving explanations for your actions, not just because you felt like it.
Right. a true explanation.
A true explanation, yes.
Okay. Pastor Griffith says another way to facilitate trust in your relationships is to always ask ourselves, if my partner discovered this without me having told them, would they consider me deceitful? Pastor Griffith, you're raising another whole topic right there.
If I could say something.
So should I come forward first, or should I wait until they hear it from somebody else, right? Somebody else,
Yeah,
Sure,
if I could say something there, one of the same agreements I have with my husband is that, you know, even simple things like he ran into an old schoolmate, a female, and had lunch. He would quickly then say, he might either drop a message there and then, or if he comes home, he would say, I ran into Michelle, you know, so we just ended up eating. But he always makes sure he tells me why. Because society is dangerous. Come on now. You know that Susie Sue is gonna call me, girl, I ain't want to tell you nothing, but your man was the, oh yeah, he was there with Michelle. Yeah, they went school 6 years together. You don't ever want to be ambushed.
I think the reason is because women are less trusting than men.
Oh, wow.
I don't think so.
Oh, wow.
I disagree.
Sorry. No, Pastor Henry, Pastor.
Wow. I'm afraid to ask you to explain that comment.
No, but I mean, you know, when you think about it, I mean, you know, I mean, I quite agree with the comment, what Sharita said, and even the last statement there. But you think about it. I mean, ask really. I mean, some of the things that we men take for granted, somehow women just have this way, you may be
We have a
chatting with
sixth
a young
sense.
lady and then they be careful with her. You see, you better be careful with that woman.
Are you saying women have a sixth sense? Is that what
Exactly.
you're talking about? Okay.
Yes. Yes. The
Okay, we
sixth
do.
sense does
We
come
do.
in.
We
Yes.
do. We're transparent about that. That's true. We do. God blessed us with that sixth sense.
Yes.
And
I mean, let's
you're
be
right.
honest. We are female, and my husband is involved in photography. And part of that, he has to set his boundaries very high. Some people come for portraits. Some ladies come and see him as a nice little snack and work out how they're going to manipulate him into trying to get him into some suggestive whatever. And some people would show up in his presence and he cannot see that they have foul intentions, but I can sniff it from a mile. Women know women.
That's true.
So I sometimes would tell him, if anything, yeah, be a little cautious of that one there. Just be cautious. And he knows from the time I tell him that I am seeing something that that is not on his radar. And only then he will pay attention. Man, y'all not gifted with this thing,
So
man.
let me ask a question. Are you women ever wrong? Does that mean you're always right with your sixth sense?
Most of the
Yes,
time.
it's a special superhero sense.
Yes.
You know?
Once used healthily, it is very powerful.
But the question is, are you always right with your sixth sense? That's
For
the
the
question
most
I'm asking.
part,
Yes.
for the most part,
Yes. Yes.
But isn't that an expression of being not trusting?
No.
No. The person who you're not trusting is that other person. You're trusting your spouse. That's why you tell them.
Yes.
But if you trust your people, then you will know they will not make a decision to compromise.
What?
Yeah, but you don't ever, human beings are also still human beings, and you don't ever want them to be put in a position
of compromise.
Of vulnerability, yes.
Yes.
Pastor Samuel, let the women stay there and keep believing that sixth sense is always right. Don't debate it, let it rest.
Okay, I rest.
There was a comment in the chat from the Henrys. Oh, also stay faithful while absent, whether in thoughts, words, or deeds. Don't backtalk your spouse to others. It's the little things. Very well put. It sounds like Bevan. I don't know, but very well put. Yes, it's important. I think Sharita talked about keeping your what happens in your home or your relationship private and not sharing that externally. And that goes along with that as well. Can you love without trust? Maxine asked. Can you love without trust?
No.
Sister Divine says we have spidey senses. Yes, I trust my spidey sense. Women are more intuitive. That's a good way of putting it. Yes,
that's a
we
good
are.
word, yes.
We are, and perceptive. Joanne, let's see. Normally we are right. The sixth sense is real. Wow, good comments here. 100%.
Let's call it a spirit of discernment. We have a strong spirit of discernment.
Oh, I love what Maxine said. She says, women know other women, and we're usually right.
Yes.
Joanne says, we're not always right, however, not too far from the truth. Very perceptive.
Lord.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
I am not touching that at all. I would take Pastor Gifford advice.
I take back my question. I was only curious. But one of the things, Dr. Nev, that I'd like to say about this whole idea of trust and trustworthiness is that the whole idea of maintaining trust, we have to be trustworthy. And I think Pastor Griffith was alluding to that. We must be trustworthy.
Yeah.
And I see trustworthiness like a bank account.
Mhm.
So you can deposit into that account and you can withdraw.
Mhm.
It depends on the size of the withdrawal. You can realize that you're in a real problems of a real trust deficit, if you want to put it that way. So that it may be a small deficit, like probably searching into the cell phone when you had agreed not to, may not be as bad as if on that cell phone you are caught with, pictures are there that you shouldn't have. And text messages are there that you should not have received or sent. So it depends. And so I would say that during the times when you have your, in your relationship, and I think Pastor Samuel gave some very good pointers on how to build trust. You build them when things are okay, because there will come a time when you will have a withdrawal.
Yeah.
Okay. And when that withdrawal takes place, you have to know how to rebuild it. Let me share an example. I was just married for the second time, probably 18, 19 years ago. And I was going to Lima sometime early September. My wife's birthday is in the middle of September. So I thought, what a nice gesture to buy a ticket and take her to Lima on the trip. And I did that. And I said, this is your birthday gift. So come her birthday, she was living here in Barbados. I was in Trinidad. I called her several times throughout the day, checked up on her. And then in the evening, when I called, we spoke. And in the evening, when I called, the lady is crying. And I can't figure out what I did wrong. Everything was all right during the day. And then she says to me, but you forget my birthday. Today's my birthday and you didn't wish me happy birthday. Well, I just took you to a trip to Lima a few weeks ago, or a week ago.
It wasn't her birthday then.
You didn't wish her happy birthday on the day. On the day, you didn't wish her happy birthday.
So the following year, what I did, I called her in the morning and I didn't wish her happy birthday. I just said to her, this is what is happening. I'm going to be out of the office for a little while today, and I'll talk to you later when I got back. And so at 12 o'clock, I showed up at her office. 5 lovely roses.
That is so nice.
Happy birthday. So when you withdraw, you have to know how to redeposit. It may take a little while to redeposit, but you have to know how to redeposit. And that is so important to maintain trust.
That's a great segue, Pastor Henry, into the final segment. How do you regain trust? How do you prove yourself trustworthy again when trust has been broken? I'm not saying that that's what you did. You didn't break trust, but I'm just how do you regain trust when trust has been broken? And anyone can jump in.
Good night. I actually have a question.
Yes.
What if you bounce up a conversation with your partner and someone else, and you consider the conversation sketchy, but your partner does not see anything wrong with it? Is that a betrayal of trust if the person does not see anything wrong with it, but you find it sketchy and probably a conversation that should not be happening?
I would say initially, and this is all I'm going to say, others can jump in. It depends on who the partner is. Are we talking about a male partner or a female partner? Is it a husband or a wife? Because oftentimes the husbands, certain things just go over their heads. It goes back to that intuitive nature that we have. What we recognize as sketchy, they just don't see it. So if you talk about a male partner, then there's a area of forgiveness there, because he just didn't get it. And what he has to do is to allow you the opportunity to explain what you saw, what you heard, what about that conversation is sketchy. I rest.
Yeah, I think communication is so important in these type of situations that even in restoring trust that has been broken, communication is the key. And the key with communication is to be honest. The key is to be honest, brutally honest. You did it, I did it. It may hurt, but it's to be brutally honest. If trust is going to be rebuilt, because when you tell that lie, and we spoke about honesty sometime, but when you tell that lie and then the person finds out that it was a lie, the whole trust account is depleted again.
Yep.
So it's to, when rebuilding, to speak the truth. And
if I, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, Sharita, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying if I could add to that, not only speaking the truth, which I wholeheartedly agree with, but then now we have to look at the counter side. We have to actively listen. Actively listen.
Yeah.
A lot of what hurts when somebody is there speaking their truth, pouring their heart out, getting their point across is, you know, especially in times of war, the other person might look defensive, or active listening shows that, you know what, let me show this person I genuinely care about what has wounded them. And my body language shows that I want to learn how not to do this again, and to preserve the sanctity of my union. So that's the thing. Sometimes one person is speaking the truth, but the other person is not showing,
not listening.
Yeah.
I want to add to that, and I want to go back to something I shared when we talked about listening. You listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart. And after you've actively listened, the person who is being transparent and being honest and being open about what happened, you also have to realize that your partner needs the time to deal with this. Yes. Because now that you've gotten it off your chest, you feel, oh, I don't have to worry about it anymore. But that person needs to deal with it. You've been dealing with it. So when you've deposited, you've just emptied your chest on whatever the issue was. Now that person has all of that on them, and they need the time and the respect to deal with it and to work through it, so that you can build and rebuild that relationship and regain that trust again. Don't expect them immediately to say, okay, I forgive you and all is well. They need that time to deal with it.
Yes, yes. And also to roll on to that, even in terms of taking time to process, there's the other end of the spectrum too. Like, for example, someone like me, if I have been wronged, I am not the person to react immediately. Let me tell you why. Over 40 something years of living, I know myself, I go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. So training over the years has kept me, has given me the ability to shut my mouth before saying what I need to say prematurely. So I am actually that person that you have to give me, if I get back to you tomorrow on an incident that happened today, it's in a calm tone, it's delivered well, it's packaged beautifully, everything that I really want to get out comes out. So you have to understand your partner's communication style too. Don't feel that when there's a grievance, because they didn't react immediately, they don't care. They just want to make sure that, sometimes they want to make sure they handle it in a mature way, so that both of you benefit from the experience of talking it out thereafter, and it's productive.
Yep.
Excellent point.
Yeah. And I think we also have to focus on avoiding the appearance of evil, you know, the situations where we don't allow things to look like we fall into the same trap again. And so we have to be aware of that. And I also like the fact of being transparent. Because I think sometimes, well, I'm not married, so I'm not trying to act like if I am. But I know sometimes in situations when we break other people's trust, like I said earlier, we sometimes think, like Dr. Ness says, that as long as we get it off of our chests, we're fine and we're good, and we wonder why you're taking so long and why you're still holding on to this and why, and not respecting that time is needed and that I have to now prove myself worthy again of that trust. And I may have to do a few things differently. I may have to say where I'm going now. I may have to check in on you more than I did before. You know, I may have to give you a little more accountability than I did before, just to make sure that you feel comfortable. But sometimes some folks say, you know, why do I have, you know, we feel uncomfortable doing those things, not realizing those things help. And whatever will help, we should be willing to do, and not just think about how it makes me. It makes you feel like a boy, it makes you feel like less than a man. I always have to keep explaining. But it's not really about you anymore. You broke trust. So you must be willing to do what is needed or necessary to regain that trust so you can be worthy again of that trust. And so I think sometimes we need to be mindful of those things and understand that we may have to do things differently, be more transparent, and avoid the appearance of evil to ensure our partner or whoever they are understands that we're doing everything in our power to regain that trust and to become worthy again of their trust.
In the chat, Divine says, trust is earned when actions meet words. When your actions start to match your words, then trust can be rebuilt. Yeah. She also says, so true, whatever you empty, you have to make sure your partner, whenever you empty, you have to make sure your partner is able to carry it. Emptying on the wrong person could backfire or cause more harm than good. You may feel released, but now your partner is bound. I agree that it's important to allow your partner to disguise the information on their term, I guess, or to deal with the information on their term.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
One of the things that we need to understand with trust, and it happens so often, I see it so often, especially in the counseling room. Someone has broken trust, and somehow you patch up the case, and you know the other person is willing to forgive and what have you and so on. And you know, the person does things now like well, let me use an example. This guy, he had a relationship outside of, an extramarital relationship. And so evening times he would leave home and would dress and go out for a couple hours and then come back. And the wife gets angry. And he would say, but you don't trust me. And he's blaming the wife for the wife not trusting him. And so I had to say to him, listen to me, you know, you can't expect your wife to trust you. You need to do things to make sure that she trusts you. So what you need to do is when you are going out, you take her with you.
Yes.
You know, do things that would cause her to trust you. You can't expect, I mean, you were the broken stick. I mean, it's like going out to sea on a boat and the boat took water and somehow we just made it back to shore, and without any repairs, the boat is saying, trust me, let's go again. You expect me to be crazy. I'm not going to do that. None of us will do that. So that when we breach trust, we have to put ourselves out of the way to do things that would rebuild trust.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of whether the person trusts us or not. We have to prove ourselves to be trustworthy.
Absolutely. So there are two sides to this trust coin. You know, you trust others, but you have to prove yourself to be trustworthy, to be worthy of someone else's trust. Yeah. Okay, if we have no more questions, There's another comment. Anne says, I think that building trust takes time, and mistrust also develops over time. Okay. We learn about planting the seeds of mistrust. We don't want to plant seeds of mistrust because it tends to deplete our trust bank.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask for closing remarks from the panelists. It's approaching our time. So let's start with Sharita. Closing remarks from you.
I can just share from personal experience what has helped me is number one, start off by learning one another's love languages. Is it quality time? Is it words of affirmation? Is it gifts? Is it, and start building them up according to those love languages, because it speaks to them and it helps to tighten your bond. I would encourage that once you start walking with a partner, a very powerful act of building trust is 3 things. Going out, as I said, on your own. You had a life before you met. Continue that life healthily, whether you're in the garden club, whether you're in the 4-H, whatever. Going out together, making that appointed time to renew, refresh, and keep working together. And also just taking time to acknowledge the space that each other needs, whether it's within the house or outside with their man cave or in your she shed. Give each other that space to grow. My closing point is this: working on a commitment on working on the relationship is as important as the commitment you made to a partner. If you commit to a partner and you don't commit to the work, the seal of trust which you stood up before everyone and said, I do, and I love you too, and together forever, that will quickly rip apart if you don't constantly nourish, garden, prune, apply, go to the, we make a point that every year we try to go to some sort of marriage event or event that could strengthen us, not ever thinking that we have arrived. I think you have to see the marriage as a journey where you're constantly working on helping each other get closer to the ultimate goal of truly intimacy.
Thank you, Sharita. Pastor Samuel?
My thought is really communication. I think that's a biggie, and I think you can talk and still not communicate. And oftentimes we think because we are talking, it means we are communicating. I believe communication is really about connection. And when you communicate is when you hope to connect. And once you connect, trust is built, information is explained, virtue passed, things are established because it's like you're building a tapestry. And so I think it's important for us to emphasize, spend time really, not just talking, but really, trying to connect with each other and communicate sound, meaning of words, body language, all the things that is necessary so that we can really get the message across to each other, so there be no miscommunication or misunderstanding that leaves room for distrust and argument and stuff. And so I believe so much that communication is a major key. And I mean, do our best to communicate and communicate and communicate, and then after communicate. Don't take anything for granted, and don't assume that people understand, and don't assume that things are worked out. Communicate to ensure things are worked out and that you are connecting with the person and not just talking to the person, because you communicate in order to connect and not just to talk.
All right, thank you, Pastor Samuel. Pastor Henry?
Mistrust does not start with the person who has committed an action of mistrust. It starts with the person It starts in the other person's mind, the person who is supposed to trust. That's where mistrust begins. It begins in our mind.
Yes.
It was the first sin in the Garden of Eden, that the devil was able to get Eve to mistrust what God had said. God didn't do anything, didn't have to do anything. But once mistrust was formed in the minds of Eve, she sinned against God. And, we have to guard against that, so that there are times we may see something that may trigger a thought of mistrust. As Pastor Samuel said, you communicate so as to make sure that you do everything possible to get that thought out of your head. Weapons of our warfare, they're not carnal, they're mighty to God to pulling down imaginations. And sometimes we keep them and we play with them in our mind,
Right.
and until they destroy us. And so communicate. And yet to build trust, it's also in our minds, so that you think on the things that are lovely, you think on the things that are beautiful, you think on the things that are worth the while in that person, and you keep meditating on them. And in so doing, you will build trust. The Lord bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Henry. I don't want to, I think Abigail had asked a question earlier, and it goes to a point that Sharita had made. And her question was, how could you foster healthy relationships outside of marriage where both partners are comfortable? Sharita?
Yes, how can you have a healthy relationship? Well, I guess I experience it for myself. As I said, number one, it's about balance. So we do a lot of activities together where we don't hide one another from our friends and family. I try to expose him to my side of girlfriends and our activities when we do things together, and vice versa. And once again, communication. He might just tell me, oh yes, I'm down here with Ryan chatting, and we're hoping to go and mingle a little bit later. Because he has come out and announced it, I feel a level of respect. Because he comes home at a civil, decent hour, I feel a level of respect. And because he comes and tells me, yeah, we had a good time, and without going into detail on what they discussed privately, yeah, John came out and Bob, and we sat down and it was really good. And because he came and shared, that's where we bond as well. Because he doesn't have to feel like if he has to do this secretly. And it's just about the mutual respect aspect. Talking, sharing, and keeping it healthy and above board.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, friends, thank you so much for joining us this evening for another episode of Shared Family Values, focusing on trust and trustworthiness. We hope that we have inspired some trust within you. We hope that we've inspired some confidence in your ability to trust and to be trustworthy, and to hopefully raise some questions in your mind that you can ponder on, so that you can begin to build the level of trust, that you can begin to regain or repair trust if there's a need, and also so that you can begin applying those building blocks of trust, so that you can continue to strengthen your trust bank, so there's something in there when you need it. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to again put in the chat. We will address them, and we hope that you will come back the next time around when we continue our faith panel on the various discussions that focus on building shatterproof families. Thank you all for being here tonight. Anyone else have any comments? Feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next program will be on the 27th. Dr. Neff and the other panelists, thank you very much. Our next program will be on the 27th on parenting. So please free to join in. We will have 2 or 3 young people who are children on as panelists on that evening, so that it would not be a one-sided. We have 2 parents also. So it would not be a one-sided issue where the parents are getting all the talk, but we'd hear from the children as to what they expect good parenting supposed to be. So plan to join us at 7:30 p.m. on the 27th, next 2 Tuesdays from now, when we discuss parenting. The Lord bless you richly, and do have a wonderful evening. By the way, just before you go, could you just shout where you're from? Just take off your mic and shout where you're from. I think we are seeing people from all over the world this evening.
Jamaica.
Trinidad.
Arizona.
New York.
New York.
Jersey.
New Jersey.
Trinidad.
Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Trinidad.
Great.
Barbados, of course.
Arizona/Trinidad.
Somebody can't leave home.
Oh,
The Netherlands, of course.
Netherlands. Oh, nice having you. Ah, that was a long layup there this evening.
wow.
Yeah. It's nice having all of you. I'm even seeing Sister Boland with us from Trinidad, Pastor Boland's wife. Yeah, so many other people. Lord bless every one of you, and thank you for joining us. Invite someone to our next session, please. Lord bless you.
Okay. Good night to all.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
God bless you all. Good, good. Okay. Okay. Dr. Neff, we try to set up a meeting for Saturday, God's willing.
Okay, good.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I send out a notice.
All right.
Okay, folk, have a pleasant night, those who remain in. Good.